It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host this morning, like it or not. Glad to have you on board. If you're catching us live on our website, that's great news. You can always find us there live on audio and or video by simply going to americasvoicenow.org. 8 to 10 a.m., show plays live, and you can watch it on video, or you can capture it on audio. Your preference. You can also catch us live every morning on Patriot FB, which is an outstanding website that's kind of a clone of Facebook, but it's patriotic, and it's limited to those who will not troll and abuse others. So there's a couple of other great radio programs on there. After mine, or after I go on there from 8 to 10 live, you can catch Resurrect the Republic with Tom Lakarova. He will come on, and then after that, 2 to 4 is J.J. McCartney with an outstanding show. And then 9 to midnight is Midnight Patriot with Jeff Norton. Great programming, outstanding work and stuff for patriots. Great source of alternative news for you. And so, hope you're all having or had a good weekend. We are going to look at 4 specific topics this morning and try to make some sense of the nonsense that seems to go on every day. Everywhere you look, it appears like people and principles are completely out of control. And one of the stories this morning is that Interpol, there was this plane crash over the weekend off of Vietnam, and the plane disappeared in thin air over water, and they found some oil slicks and what appears to be a door floating in the water, and so on and so on. Turns out that 2 people on the plane were using stolen passports. And the interesting part of that is that Interpol retains a database of stolen passports, but the airlines don't have access to them. You got to be kidding me. I mean, come on, folks. How hard is it to recognize? I mean, look, if the FDA knew about rancid beef that was out there in food stores across the country and failed to inform the supermarkets, wouldn't that be the same thing? Wouldn't you be in an uproar and say, well, why didn't they tell anybody? I mean, if there was counterfeit money running around there and the Treasury Department failed to send a notice to the banks of all the serial numbers of all the bad money, wouldn't you say, hey, guys, you see, what I'm trying to point out to you is this. It just goes to show you that all of this global, not just domestic, nonsense about we're here to keep you safe is a bunch of hogwash. It is cow dung. It ain't about keeping you safe. It's all a chimera. It's all a smokescreen. It's all a shadow. The truth of it is, you don't matter. You only matter to them if you threaten them, become a threat to them. All of this is really about one thing: controlling you. We're going to take the second topic this morning. The House has passed a bill, which I'm assuming, when we talk about the Senate, will go nowhere. And this bill is to end Obama's war on coal. Well, why does that matter? Well, we can't burn unicorn fart. I mean, as much as we'd like to, it doesn't burn in these electric generation plants, and coal does. And since only 6% of our energy comes from these alternative energy methods like solar and wind and what have you, we're not in a position where we can cancel out the one fuel source that does produce power. In other words, I analogize this to the argument that you hate your job, but we're in a bad economy and the unemployment rate is through the roof. In reality, irrespective of what the government tells you, it's about 22%. And when you look at that number, who in their right mind would quit their job and say, don't worry, I'll find another? You would never do that. You would take the time while you had a job to find another job. That's how you do it. That's logic. That's reason. That's common sense. But no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to destroy the coal industry, and we're going to end the ability for us to produce and generate electricity with coal, and we don't have a replacement in mind. Hello? Well, that'll just necessarily make your electric bill skyrocket, says President Barack Obama back in 2007. Yeah, no kidding. You see, for him, it's a no-brainer. He doesn't really care whether or not you can afford to keep the lights on in your house. All he's interested in is meeting his agenda, which requires you to be stripped of your livelihood, your savings, your ability to function in society, your ability to speak out when your government is doing wrong. And the only thing that you're allowed to do now is just be a little good automaton in the cog. All right, our third topic, Snowden. Quote, many other spy programs are still secret. We're going to talk about that because the truth is, it isn't about keeping you safe, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about controlling you. It has nothing to do with keeping you safe. And he points to some very good examples of that. Our fourth and final topic this morning will be the Farm Bill. And I'm going to expose to you how the Farm Bill has absolutely nothing to do with farming. And it's almost $1 trillion, folks. We spent almost $1 trillion putting this Farm Bill together. Now, that's for the next decade. I'll grant you that. But recognize that 80% of that Farm Bill doesn't go to farmers. It goes to food stamps. And then the other 20% is sucked up by these legal charities who have actually never even stepped foot on a farm. They may have seen one in a picture somewhere, but they've actually never been on one. And they don't run farming operations. None of it goes to family farms. None of it goes to real farmers. It's another massive government giveaway to their cronies, their friends, and their supporters. You see, both parties participate in this. Both parties swim in this same polluted river, the river of money, and you carry the weight. All right, let's jump into our first topic. By the way, if you have not been onto our Facebook page or our Patriot Facebook page, and you have not seen the guy in the tinfoil hat with the cat, every time I look at this poor cat, I look at his eyes, and the caption below that would be, "You got to be kidding me." If you don't share this photograph, I give up on you. That is, I like cats, and that is absolutely hysterical. Oh, man. All right. You got to jump on to Facebook. It's America's Voice Now. It's facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And go scroll down until you find the picture of the guy with the tinfoil hat and the cat. I'm sorry. It's absolutely hysterical. Oh, man. All right. Let me get myself together here. We've only got 15 minutes left in this segment, and I'm like a giddy idiot. All right, so let's talk about this Interpol thing. So these two stolen passports, and they don't think that's the end of it, by the way. They think there's more out there. These two stolen passports were used. Turns out that the people who owned the passports allegedly boarded the flight, and then, of course, after the thing crashed, they found out that, no, they didn't board the flight. One guy's passport was stolen as late as 2012, and there was another guy whose passport was stolen in the last year or two. Now, both of these passports were reported to Interpol, And Interpol keeps this massive database on all of the passports that are stolen. One was Austrian, and the other one was an Italian passport. And Interpol has confirmed that both of these passports were in the database. However, they were used by somebody, we don't know who, these two passengers, at least two, who boarded this missing plane. And they were both listed as stolen in their lost and stolen travel document database. Okay? So there's two others, by the way, that Interpol is investigating now that may be questionable. So here's the problem with that. While I applaud the fact that Interpol keeps a list of databases, a database of stolen passports, here's the problem. The passports database is only open to law enforcement. I mean, you got to be kidding me. So you've got millions, literally millions, of stolen passports in a database that nobody gets to see except law enforcement. But who's on the front lines? The airline. You see, this is another example of how you pile cow dung. And you know, cow dung, normally it's small enough for you to step in, right? But when you mount it and pile it and pile it and pile it, shortly it becomes Mount Everest. And this is just one more pile of cow dung in the mountain of Mount Everest proof that this surveillance state, all of this massive record keeping, real ID, all of these scams to gather and collect information about you has absolutely nothing to do with your safety and security. What it does have to do is with your absolute control. If they really cared about your security, airlines would be able to, every passport that gets registered to travel would be checked against the database. I mean, this is electronic record keeping, folks. So it's not like, you know, there's a real complexity to this. Nobody's got to sit there and scan through them physically. And there were Americans on board the plane. But the truth of the matter is, the whole point of having a database is to actually catch perpetrators who would then attempt to misuse it. And by limiting airlines from being able to gain access to it, to just check against it, they don't have to see it. They just have to be able to push a number through and have a database throw up a big red button on the front of the screen that says, "Warning." I mean, look, anybody, a first-year programming student could make that system work. And we're spending trillions, and I do mean trillions, on security and safety and all of this massive infrastructure to track everyone and everything. The problem is that they're not using it for what we really need it used for. It's all a lie. They're not intending to keep you safe. And the reason they're not is because, quite honestly, they don't care about you. You are of zero consequence. When you die, 239 people die on a plane, it's collateral damage to these people. You're not important. Only your production, only what you can produce. You are a resource. But every farmer knows that he's going to plant corn and, you know, one or two stalks are going to come up and not produce. And he doesn't really care. He doesn't waste all his time wandering around trying to make sure that he finds that one stalk that won't produce. Government is not interested in you, per se. They're interested in you for two reasons, or the only two issues that really matter to them about you. One, what can you produce for them? And two, at any point in time, will you ever become a threat to them? We're going to talk about that in a minute. See, the real truth is, government doesn't give a rat's rear end whether you live or die, you're happy, you're sad, you're ill or healthy. They couldn't care less. The only thing that matters is they've got to keep a tag on you. Like a farmer or like a cowman or a cattleman keeps track of his animals with a tag in their ear. And from time to time, there's an animal that's a problem, and they just cull it from the herd. There was an article out this morning about how Eric Holder, and this is, of course, according to Sensenbrenner, right, who's a Republican, and he says Eric Holder should control Texas voting laws, and he labels Texas as a discriminatory state for voting. You got to be kidding me. This is a Republican now, or a pubican, which is what they really are. They're all pubic hair. That's all they are. Eric Holder is the last person who should be determining who is or is not, and what or what is not a racist. He's incapable of making sure that the dogs get even Steven food in their bowls. Here's the problem, and I want you to watch the video because James O'Keefe, who is now at this point famous for catching these idiots in these really blatantly, well, you saw him with the Acorn. He broke the Acorn story and actually was the cause of Acorn's demise, even though everybody knew what was going on. This guy went in there with a video camera and got proof. And he's done it repeatedly. Well, he gets Sensenbrenner at a town hall type meeting, and you got to hear this guy fumbling and stepping all over his tongue, trying to explain what he's doing. I mean, I'm telling you, after you hear this guy, you can't possibly believe that Sensenbrenner has any job in the Senate at all, has any business being in there. The guy's a complete buffoon and an idiot. And it just goes to show you that all these people are interested in is what can they get from you. I'm so disgusted with the way that our political system operates at this point that there is no salvage of any of them, not a single one. To be perfectly candid with you, at this point in time, and looking at where we are in the overall, the bigger picture, I can see only one solution here that makes sense. Press the reset button, blow everyone who's in there out, take every law that has been passed, put them all on freeze, take only those that are the absolute necessary to protect, one, our citizenry, life, liberty, and property. Secondarily, our environment, i.e., you cannot be, XYZ paint company and pour toxins into the water. And then make the CEOs criminally liable on a personal level so that when they do that, you don't fine them. The chief executive officer and the senior executive management in the corporations go to prison. Then it will stop. And everything else, gone. And then start over. Because at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have even the remotest resemblance to what our founders created. Not even close. Not even close. And there should be a recall provision for everyone in every office. End of argument. If it's not constitutional, then the only laws that should be passed are modifications and amendments to the Constitution that allow for that. And until then, not a single law gets passed. None. No more giveaways, no more money. That's it. Stop it. You could reduce Americans' tax burdens literally by 80%. Yes, you'd have an immediate blast of unemployment from all of these government workers who suddenly found themselves on the outside looking in, like the rest of us. And they'd have to go find real gainful employment somewhere else. And you can bet corporate America would not put up with a whole bunch of people who pretend to actually do something and do nothing but create red tape and bureaucracy. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to look at this House bill that was just passed to stop the war on coal that's being pushed as an agenda, and the reason why we have to end it. There is no alternative to it, folks. And unless you want to pay 3 times what you're paying for your electric bill now, you're going to get on board. And you're going to get you're going to get some contact off to your alleged Senate representative, and I do say alleged, and you're going to do it en masse. All right, we'll be back in just a minute. You are currently listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I'm the host here. You can find us live at americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back. Do me a favor before you have when you have an opportunity to, and please make sure that you visit our sponsors, including the law offices of Jason Henry. You can get a hold of him by contacting him at 417-256-4100. He handles criminal law for state and civil issues, also handles state issues criminal law for state and federal issues, but also in addition to that does handle some civil work and also automobile-related personal injury cases. Give him a call at 417-256-4100. Our friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, where they've got literally hundreds of cigars under glass and in humidors awaiting you. Our friends over at With's End Classic Barbershop, where I get my hair cut once a week. These are the guys who do it. Make sure that you ask for Jason. And you can reach him if you need to get hours and location at 372-2027. Also, our friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. Make sure that you swing in there on Tuesday night for Kids Eat Free on Family Night. Our friends at Mini Marts Express 1 and 2, they both have a drive-thru, so make sure that you take advantage of that. That drive-thru location is at each of their 2 facilities. The one location is up on 14 and 63, right across the street from where 14 takes off, right there at the junction. And they are in Old Granny's Cafe building. So right across the street from a gas station, you'll be able to see their facility, swing in there, and take advantage of their services. They also have another location across the street from the city pool in West Plains. And again, they've got the guaranteed lowest discount prices on tobacco products and things like that. So swing in there and take advantage of their services. Let them know that you heard about them on America's Voice Now. Last and certainly not least is Battery Station and my friend Kevin over there. Do yourself a favor and get over to the Battery Station. Become a part of that family. You can also sign up for their cooperative wholesale food project. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And you can reach them at 417-257-7799 or batterystation.com. We'll be right back. No doubt about it. It's a Monday, huh? All right. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us live on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can also catch us, and every program that we do is videotaped and shot up and posted up on YouTube, where you can share them. Key operative word there, folks, was share them. And you can find that site by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We mean what we say when we say we are America's voice, because I think we speak for the mass of Americans who aren't heard. You know, we're not being listened to by our representatives. The media doesn't represent our views. In fact, they do everything they can to either block you from having that view or to quash them when you try to speak out. We also have a vast amount of Americans who are so angry at this point about what's being done to us and in our government that no one knows about. I mean, why is it that we don't have a voice? That is exactly what the problem is, folks. We don't have a voice. No one in Congress could care less. In fact, they don't want anyone to know you exist, both the Republicans and the Democrats. You know, I look at all over the weekend, I keep hearing about CPAC, and all of this nonsense about it. Let me tell you something. They have these straw polls, you know, and for the record, Rand Paul won it, you know. Cruz came in, I think, second or third, I don't know. Chris Christie, I think, came in last. Thank goodness for that, right? Because that guy is like, if you look at Chris Christie and you think to yourself, that's a conservative, you and I have nothing further to talk about. But the truth is, none of them represent us. None of them represent the reality of where we are in our society. Ted Cruz, who I like, but I also have serious misgivings about, and I'll tell you why. He comes from a career in law enforcement and as a prosecutor. And that tells me that his thinking is tainted. You know, when you hear about people who, as an example, are long-term abusers of a drug, let's say methamphetamine, or when you hear about people who are on antidepressants for a very, very long time, the clinical, and this is epidemiological evidence, this isn't just me talking, the clinical evidence suggests that it rewires the brain in a permanent way. In other words, your synapse is reconnected in ways that were not natural. And I would submit to you that working in government for all of your life and being a government careerist does the same thing. It rewires your thinking into a manner that is not in connection with reality. You earn far more than most people out in the public or in the private arena of business. I mean, we've seen numerous studies that show that people who work for government consistently earn far more money working for the public, quote unquote, than do their counterparts in private corporations and industry. Not to mention the bennies and the pensions and all the stuff that you don't get anymore in the corporate world. And it rewires your thinking because you only see the world through government-colored glasses. And you begin to believe that it's all up to you and that your thinking, however skewed or twisted or schizophrenic that may have become over the years, is that matters, that you have the power. It's the same power that a police officer feels when he puts on that uniform, when a military figure feels when he puts on that uniform. It changes that person's mentality. It changes their approach. It changes their thinking. It changes their view of the world around them. And don't tell me that being a careerist in the political arena or a careerist in government, period, does not change your thinking. It does. And it makes you tone deaf to the reality of the other 300 million of us who are here. You've got 315 million people in the nation. 15 million of them are completely ensconced in the bubble of government. You know, it shouldn't come as a surprise to you. I don't know why it is. And I don't mean you personally, but I don't know why it's a surprise to the nation that we are surrounded by people who have a vested interest in remaining a tick attached to the blood supply. The House approves this bill to stop Obama's war on coal. Now, look, for the record, I'm just going to draw this simple analogy for you. But 67% of all of our electricity generated by power plants comes, or all of the electricity supply in the United States, I should say, 67% comes from a combination of coal and fossil products, right? Whether that be natural gas or oil, but very few plants burn oil. There's quite a few now who are migrating to natural gas, but the vast majority use coal. 6%, and that's the average standard that's used in most arenas, which means it may well be inflated because everybody's for it and nobody's against it. But let's just use their number. 6% is generated by alternative energy sources, and that includes a combination of solar and wind. Now, and other forms, by the way. Solar is wonderful, but it's expensive, it's unreliable, and here's the problem with all energy. I don't care who makes it. You can't store it. There's no way to store energy. So it has to be produced on demand. And, well, solar has a problem because we experience 12 hours of no sunlight. And that's just nature's way. Wind is a problem because, well, there's some places where it just doesn't blow all the time. And even in those places where it does, it doesn't consistently produce enough power. So when we have a primary fuel source, which would be coal, that produces the vast majority of the electric supply in the United States of America, how can we look at that and say, we're going to end that, but we don't have something to take its place? I mean, it's not like electricity is a luxury for us. I want you to spend 2 seconds and think about all the things that you touch so far this morning that have required electricity. Let's see, your coffee or your coffee pot, the computer or the audio device you're listening to this on, the lights that are in your home. I mean, there's just so many things. We live on electricity, and we don't have an alternative to coal. So I analogize this to the kid who says, you know, I really hate my job. I have just had enough. My boss, he's mean. He makes me show up 5 minutes before I'm supposed to. How dare he? And when I'm there, he actually wants me to work. And I would suggest that there are those individuals who will look at their situation with lack of experience and say, that's it, I've had enough, I'm quitting. And they will, without another job in hand. And then a month or two later, as they are out of money and their final paycheck has come through and been spent, they begin to complain about how unfair it is that they don't have a job. Well, individuals with good logical reasoning skills and critical thinking skills would say, I really hate my job. So I'm going to take this opportunity before I leave to find an alternative position that will be more satisfactory or more personally fulfilling or pay better or whatever the reasons are. And then they will go out and seek another job. When they have found one, they will notify their old boss and say, you know, boss, I appreciate the opportunity you've given me here, but I found another job that will give me a little bit more personal satisfaction, a little bit more money, whatever the case may be, and they move on. That's what intelligent, well-reasoned, articulate individuals do. We, as a nation, need to look at that same analogy and say, we will not give up coal until we have found an alternative source that betters it. We will not believe a lot of falsified, paid-for scientific opinions that are unrepeatable, not peer-reviewable, that expose all of the science that's been done as a fraud. We need to be able to say, we're not going to rely on anything other than that which we know will be consistently available to us. When we have an alternative, and it has proven itself, and it is not only cost-effective, but functional, then and only then can we cease using coal. The truth is that there's really no reason to stop using coal, especially in the United States. I mean, I'm not arguing that we're not a polluter. We are. But that doesn't mean that we unilaterally should stop using coal while China's building them as fast as they can, coal plants. Did you know that? Did you know that almost every other nation in the world is building coal plants as fast as they can? We, on the other hand, are seeking to destroy our own infrastructure for pseudoscience. Pseudoscience because we still don't have any empirical evidence that climate change exists and or that we're responsible for it. Even if it does exist, there's no empirical proof that we're the ones who are responsible for it, and that changing anything about the coal-burning industry to create electricity will have an impact on that. And I would suggest to you that it makes absolutely no sense to change our entire nation. We're not talking about 1/6 of the economy here, folks. We're talking about 60% of the economy. Because when you cut electricity or you triple the rate, you put everyone out of business. You take the homeowner and you make them have to make a choice now between a massive electric bill and food or medicine or school or education or gas to get to work to pay the electric bill. Obama has said to us a long time ago, before he ever ran, under my plan, electricity prices will necessarily skyrocket. And like many, many, many other statements that he's made that come to pass. Now, everyone at the time said, well, that's not what he really means. Why don't you take this guy as a man of his word when it comes to those types of statements? He told you what his intention was. And he's now achieved it. The House has approved this bill to block the climate plan. The problem, of course, and by the way, for the record, this thing passed with 10 Democrats voting on behalf of the bill. They wanted it. There were 3 Republicans who opposed it. These 3 were, well, whatever. I mean, I'm just so tired of pointing out treason. I don't get it. I mean, how can anybody be against it? ABC News came out and says, the bill targets Obama's proposal for the Environmental Protection Agency to set the first national limits on heat-trapping carbon pollution from future power plants. It's part of the GOP's election year strategy to fight back against what Republicans call a war on coal by the Obama administration. Well, it's not just the Obama administration's war on coal. It's the environmental movement's war on coal. He happens to be their greatest weapon, the biggest bat they own. And to be honest with you, it's not the GOP's election year strategy. This should be a pocket strategy for every American. We can't afford it. In a bad economy with no jobs, and frankly, a bad economy with a future that happens to go out as far as the eye can see, the last thing we should be doing is tacking on higher costs to the high cost of being poor for the vast majority of America. And I do mean the vast majority. 50% of the country can't afford their bills now. How do I know that? Because 50% of the country is on food stamps. You only get on food stamps when you're not making enough to make the ends meet, right? So how much more empirical proof do we need? 50% of the country is making a choice between electricity and food. And we're subsidizing the food. So what do you think is going to happen when the electric bill goes up? You don't even need a calculator. Just do the math in your head. It's that easy. See, all of this has nothing to do, and again, it's proof that you are meaningless in the overall scheme of things. You're just, you're just beans in a silo. So many billions of us. We're all just beans in the silo. And every once in a while, one or two goes bad and they toss it out. No big deal. No harm done. The problem is that these beans all have lives and sentience, and we think. Or at least most of us do. But that's not of importance to these people. The idea of Obama is to bankrupt the coal industry. He's told us so. In fact, in 2008, when he was on his campaign, he told the San Francisco Chronicle, he said, if somebody wants to build a coal-fired power plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them. Now, the question is, why would we, as a logical, intelligent organism with the ability to reason, which is the only thing that separates us from the animals and the only thing that separates us from the flora and fauna of the planet, why would we allow this to happen? Why would we allow one person to commit national suicide and on behalf of all of us? See, that's the problem. You got 15 million people all buried into government up to their necks. And they're intent on committing national suicide. Not because they're depressed, because they've got some cockamamie ideal, like those people who committed suicide because they thought they were going to go to a star or some stupid nonsense. It's all fantasy. Heaven's Gate. That was the name of those knuckleheads. And these idiots who want to live in a fantasy land, who believe that you can inhale unicorn flatulence and survive on it, are intent on committing national suicide. The only problem is we're chained to them. So when they go over the edge of the bridge, they start hauling us along. They don't really care whether or not you agree or desire to die, as long as they achieve their goal. We are at a point, ladies and gentlemen, where the EPA is used as a bludgeon against this nation. If Congress had any intelligence, had any true interest in protecting you, the smallest minority, the first thing they would do is freeze the EPA and everything they do. Lock them down tight. No more. They're going out there and saying, well, if you have a wood stove, you're polluting the atmosphere. And they passed new regulations on wood stoves. Have you seen them? Do you realize that the flyover country, that would be where all of us live, that the amount of homes that are heated by wood, or at least subsidized by wood, because we can't afford the doggone electric bill, meanwhile, you have people in the EPA who are using secret email accounts, all this dirt going on. You got Obama using them in the IRS as weapons of mass destruction against the nation which he's sworn an oath to protect and uphold. I cannot think of another example that better typifies treason than the destruction of your own nation while you are in the highest position in the land because that's your personal belief. And frankly, I don't even think he believes it. He's not an ideologue. He's a puppet. He's been groomed. And frankly, I don't care what he thinks. The truth of the matter is, he wants to commit suicide. Let him. But don't drag the rest of us along. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle our third topic. Edward Snowden has made a statement, which you all ought to hear. And it is that there are many other spy programs that remain secret for now. In fact, there's more that remain secret than those which have been exposed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, ought to be troubling to the point of scaring the poop out of you. Because we've already seen a surveillance state that boggles the mind. We don't even know what these other elements are. But I can tell you that at this stage in the game, none of it bodes well for you. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We'll be back in just a moment. Ride with us. And we'll take this quick break. You can find us live at americasvoicenow.org in the morning. And you can find great stories, news, and articles posted up there and on our Facebook page. And you can find our YouTube videos up on YouTube at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host this morning. We are in our third segment of 4. And so far we've looked at the insanity of an Interpol database of stolen passports that covers the globe, which isn't open to the airlines. I mean, how absurdly ridiculous, right? So you keep a database of passports that are stolen, but only government gets to see it. Another secret database. I'm so tired of the word secret, I want to gag. And the second topic, we talked about the House bill to stop the war on coal. And I outlined some reasons why all of it is really just so much ridiculous stupidity. I mean, it is national suicide, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing more, nothing less. This topic, we're going to be talking about Snowden and his comment that there are, quote, many other spy programs that remain secret. You see, what we've seen is only the tip of the iceberg that Snowden is aware of. And if you think about it, the problem is that really what we have in our country today is not a surveillance state for the benefit of your protection. It's a surveillance state for the demise of the Bill of Rights, the demise of your ability to self-determine, self-govern, to be self-reliant, self-sufficient. Government doesn't want that. They want you dependent, compliant, and malleable. He was speaking to the European Parliament, by video, of course, because he can't leave Russia. Go figure, right? I know Putin's playing the game against Obama with the Snowden thing, but isn't it ironic that a guy has to run from the land of the free and the home of the brave to Russia to be protected from the insane? Hussein. Well, same thing. But what his point was to the EU, as if they're any paragons of virtue, was that he's not going to try to make a timetable of how and where and under what circumstances and which story these journalists expose. In other words, he's going to let them decide what to report and in what order and how and what have you. There are many other undisclosed programs that would impact EU citizens' rights, he said. But I will leave the public interest determinations as to which of these may be safely disclosed to responsible journalists in coordination with government stakeholders. Now, the truth of the matter is that the real purpose behind, or the real driver behind media, is that they're supposed to be a watchdog on our behalf, kind of keeping an eye on things because they have resources and the ability to, and they make a living at it, and they have the ability and the wherewithal to go in and find out what's really happening and why, and then tell us about it so that we can react appropriately and call up our our representatives in Congress and put forth our own view and redress our grievances with our government. Unfortunately, the media, for the most part, has betrayed that obligation. They've betrayed that sacred trust. And the truth is that with the programs we know about, we should be terrified. And that's only the ones we know about, folks. We're not, let's understand something here. We know about only a handful of what Snowden has. And what we know from those groups is that from not those groups, but from those revelations we've already seen, is that nothing good can come from all of this surveillance. In fact, nothing good has come from it. The truth is that, and I don't know if you saw it or not the other day, I think it was Thursday or Friday, I posted up on America's Voice and our Facebook and YouTube pages or whatever, an article about how a woman has filed a lawsuit because Immigrations and Customs was reading her email, and when she met this guy that came over here as an immigrant from Greece, and he had an appropriate visa that allowed him to stay here for 10 years, they accused her of, surreptitiously trying to marry the guy or something so that he would have easy, immigration status or something. But the point was, what they used to question her was information that they could only have gotten from her email. And they admitted to her that they'd read her email. So all of their protestations to the contrary, that they're not reading our email, is a lie. And at the very, very least, they're storing it so that they can read it when they have a reason to look for anyone or at anyone. And that's exactly my point. This isn't about keeping you safe. This is about controlling you and keeping an eye on those people that threaten them. That's what it's really about. Snowden went on to tell the EU, I don't want to outpace the efforts of journalists here, but I can confirm that all documents reported thus far are authentic and unmodified, meaning the alleged operations against Belgacom, SWIFT, the EU as an institution, the United Nations, UNICEF, and others based on documents I provided have actually occurred. I expect similar operations will be revealed in the future that affect many more ordinary citizens. Now, what that should tell you, and you should listen to it again if you need to, but what that should tell you is that he's not trying to jump ahead of the game here and be a spoiler alert kind of thing. Frankly, I wish he would. I wish he'd just do a dump, and we'd get it out there so that we could page through it, wade through it, and make determinations about it. Now, I get it. There may be some small percentage of things in there that we really don't want completely exposed. And I don't know who's responsible for determining that. I mean, realistically, I can't say who should be. What I can say is that we have gone so far over the boundary of what can and shouldn't be done here that at this stage in the game, We're entitled to know exactly how far down the path of depravity and control our government has taken us. The proof is that, and he exposes it here in this discussion, he says that Abdul Muttalib, the underwear bomber, was allowed to board a plane traveling from Europe to the United States in 2009. The 290 persons on board were not saved by mass surveillance, but by his own incompetence when he failed to detonate the device. This is Snowden speaking now. While even Muttalib's own father warned the U.S. government he was dangerous in November of 2009, our resources were tied up monitoring online games and tapping German ministers. That extraordinary tip-off didn't get Muttalib a dedicated U.S. investigator. All we gave him was a U.S. visa. And he's right. See, the truth is that, and I jump back to our first story this morning. Interpol has a massive database of all the stolen passports in the world. But the information isn't shared with those people who need it. The airline. Duh. Because they're not really interested in whether or not a bomber gets on board an airplane. Don't you get it? They look at all of us as criminals. Some of us just haven't been caught yet. Snowden went on and said, nor did the U.S. government's comprehensive monitoring of Americans at home stop the Boston bombers. Despite the Russians specifically warning us about Tsarnaev, the FBI couldn't do more than a cursory investigation. Although they did plenty of worthless computer-based searching and failed to discover the plot in which 264 people were injured and 3 died. The resources that could have paid for a real investigation had been spent on monitoring the calls of everyone in America. See, if this was really about keeping you safe, it would work. But it's not about keeping you safe. It's about keeping an eye on you so that if you raise your head above the level of the other sheep and you bleat out in a way in which you are offensive or threatening, then they know where you are and who you are. The truth is, and I'll say it until y'all hear it enough that you say, please don't say it again because we get it. This isn't about keeping you safe. It's about keeping you controlled and monitored. The truth is, they're frightened of you. Not you, but you with a collection of other Americans who say, enough's enough. You and a collection of other Americans who say, I can't take any more. I'm not going to be dragged over the edge of the bridge by a small group of suicidal malcontents who have gained control of our government. Is the world a dangerous place? It most assuredly is. But the reality is that you have a greater chance of being killed by your own government than you do of being killed by some guy with underwear packed with explosives. You have a far greater chance of being killed by police officers in your own hometown than you do of being on an airplane or a train or a bus or a building that's blown up or detonated, or being in a subway filled with some poisonous whatever. I'm not suggesting that there aren't real threats out there. I'm telling you that the government doesn't care about those real threats because they consider you to be a greater threat to them. See, they're already not worried about the guy with the underwear and the explosives packed in his rear end. They don't care about that guy. And they're safe from him because they don't fly in the same airplane you do. They don't have to ride in the same train or the same bus you do. They're already safe from him. They're not worried about him. Not from their own perspective. They're not worried about the guy in the Boston bombing who's got a backpack and a pressure cooker. Why? Because if they wanted to attend and watch the marathon, they would have a position and a place to watch from that was safe and secure, with a phalanx of bodyguards and security people around them. When they board a plane, it's a private or military or chartered plane. They don't ride with us. And so they don't fear these people. They don't fear these people for you either. They just use those people as an excuse to abuse you. This isn't just a United States problem, by the way. It's a global effort because all of these people in government, at least in the upper echelons, listen, there's a lot of minion ants in the nest or the hive or whatever you want to call it that aren't aware of the ultimate plan. They're just not privy to it. But they continue to march blindly with that leaf or the crumb or whatever it is and do their part to achieve it. They just don't know what the overall picture. They're compartmentalized. They're separated. It's like a group who's building a nuclear weapon, but the parts are built in different locations so that no one knows quite what they're building. Because you never see enough of the big picture to grasp it all. But those people who are at the top, who are in a position of authority, who do know what this is all about, recognize it for exactly what it is. And this is an organization of a small percentage of individuals in an oligarchic fashion at the top who seek a world government with two levels of citizenry. One, our friends, our benefactors, and the ultra-wealthy who make us up. And two, everybody else. And the only time that they are concerned about the everybody else is when the everybody else becomes a threat to their position, or they rise up. If all of this surveillance, if all of this monitoring was really about you and keeping you safe, it would work. but by their own admission, they've missed every cue. Investigation after investigation after investigation has shown that the fusion centers do nothing except soak up revenue. That all this monitoring has not resulted in any terroristic actions being prohibited. Well, if we do it long enough and hard enough, we'll eventually get one. Tell that to the 3 people who are dead from the Boston guy. Or the 236 that are missing a limb. It ain't about you. It's all about them. It ain't about you. You only come into the picture when you are a threat to them. And this surveillance system is not intended to protect you. It is intended to protect them from you. We're going to take a break. You're listening to America's Voice now. Please make sure that you stop and visit and work with our sponsors. We would like for you to visit the battery station. You can get to those folks by going to batterystation.com, and or you can also call them at 417-257-7799. They have an outstanding cooperative food program, which they put together in conjunction with America's Voice. If you're a listener here and you would like to be able to purchase wholesale food at bulk rates, bulk food at wholesale rates, I should say, then by all means, please get over there and ask them if you can see the co-op food catalog. Tell them you're an America's Voice listener and you would like to see the co-op catalog. They'll provide you with a catalog. You can pick the items that you want, and you can save up to 50% on your food bill by buying in bulk at wholesale prices. Not retail bulk, wholesale bulk. In other words, buying in bulk is already cheaper. Buying in wholesale bulk is cheapest yet. Batterystation.com, 417-257-7799. Visit our friends over at Pizza Hut on Tuesdays. Tuesday and Thursday, they have reduced lunch. On Tuesday evening, it is Kids Eat Free, family night. Make sure you swing by there tomorrow. They're on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. There are Pizza Huts around the country, but this is the only Pizza Hut that matters because they're the ones who support America's Voice now. Right on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. The law offices of Jason Henry, 417-256-4100. You can reach Mr. Henry and talk to him about your cases, civil and criminal, federal and state. Make sure that you contact him for any legal matter in your life. Our friends at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, where they've got literally hundreds of cigars under wraps. Great place to hold your bachelor or bachelorette party if you're getting married. In fact, they also will cater your wedding with a cigar table. How cool is that? So you can have a bar or an open bar, and you can also have a cigar bar there. That's a cool idea. And then our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, where they cut my hair every week. Ask for Jason when you swing in there and tell him you want a great haircut. Our friends, last but not least, over at AtlasSurvivalShelters.com. If you're looking for a place where you can hide out your family, there you go. And Survival by Preparedness by a friend of mine right here in Missouri, survivalbypreparedness.com. We'll be right back. The sound of America's Voice now returning to you. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear me talk about these issues here on a fairly routine basis, where we expose government corruption and abuse. And how many times have we heard the phrase, waste, fraud, and abuse. We have to find and have the government eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse from our democracy. Well, let me be the first one to clue you in. Government is waste, fraud, and abuse. The government we have, state, local, and federal, none of it honors the federalism and the principles and the concepts and the tenets that our founders put together for us. None of it. You have unconstitutional courts, extra-constitutional administrative agencies that make law they are legally barred and prohibited from doing, a Congress which betrays you at every turn, an executive which is seeking to commit national suicide and drag us all over the cliff with it. Find me any part of that that's to your best interest. Find me any part of that that doesn't fit under the description of waste, fraud, and abuse. It's all waste, fraud, and abuse. If you were to bring our founders back today, what do you think that they would say to us about what's happening in our nation today? What do you think they would say about the executive orders that President Obama issues to unilaterally change the law? What do you think they'd say about the health care law to begin with? And their ability to force you into commerce just to retain your citizenship? What do you think they'd say about a health care law passed in 2010 that eliminates the Bill of Rights, at least your Fourth and Fifth Amendment Bill of Rights, and for that matter, your First and Second, where it relates to your ability to not lose your right to privacy and not have your personal information exposed to the eyes of millions of sycophantic little gnats running around in government who can look at your personal private health care information, your income, where you live, how you got there, what's your history. What do you think they'd say about a Congress that passes a farm bill for $1 trillion, $100 billion a year? It's actually 900, I think it was 980 billion. So it's close enough for rock and roll. I mean, what's 20 billion among friends? You know, they lose that that's the rounding error on the Senate's catering bill. I mean, let's be candid. That's the tip, right? So let's call it what it is, a $1 trillion farm bill. And almost none of it has to do with farming. What do you think they would say about that? What do you think they would say about a farm bill that 80% of it goes to food stamps? So $100 billion a year, and we're now spending $80 billion a year on food stamps. When Barack Obama took office, we were spending $17 billion. We're now spending $79 billion. That's their numbers, not mine. I'm rounding up and calling it 80, but it's really 79. So I know I exaggerated it by $1 billion, but what the heck? What's $1 billion among friends? I mean, for criminy's sake, we give that away. That's the change that fell out of the hole in our pocket and dribbled along the sidewalk as we were walking. We started out with a $17 billion food stamp bill, which is already outrageous. $17 billion a year. And it's now $80 billion a year, and it's showing no signs of slowing down or stopping. Food stamps is the best new business in America. And interestingly enough, 50% of Americans have opened up their own business in the last few years. It's called the food stamp scam. Now, is every family on food stamps unworthy? No. But you can't tell me that we need 50% of the country on food stamps. The best new business in the country is trying to figure out how to get money from the federal government. Some people are, sole proprietors. If I go in and apply for food stamps, man, I get $300-400 a month. Everybody else is doing it. Why shouldn't I? Then there are the small business proprietors. These are the people who do it collectively, but in small groups. And then there's the megalithic corporate scammers. These are the nonprofits who game the system. Out of $80 million a year spent on food stamps, I don't know what the percentage is. And if you're one of those people that has the time and the energy and the motive to look it up, I'd love to know. But recognize that the food stamp program, like all charities, is generally, for the most part, hidden from view as to what percentage of that money actually makes it to the people who are collecting the money. The rest of it is eaten up in administrative nonsense. If you think the food stamp bill only cost $80 billion, you're dreaming. You're inhaling unicorn farts, and it is making your head fuzzy. Out of that $80 million, I'll bet you money $20 billion of that goes into the infrastructure with paychecks and whatever else to figure out who gets it and how they're going to get it. And that doesn't count probably another $50 to $100 billion a year in infrastructure on the back end of all the people who process it and live on it and feed on it and suck on it like ticks stuck to your dog. Growing fat on the lifeblood. Nonprofit organizations who do this in a large, organized manner. This is the organized crime of scammers, right? Oh, yeah, you know who these people are. All these large environmental groups. Listen to these. Did you know that the National Audubon Society, which is located in downtown Manhattan, New York City? Huh? Yeah. They collected almost $763,000 from the Farm Bill in the last 10 years. And then they distributed it in 8 different states to recipients. Since 1995, only 114,000 of the foundation's 932,000 has been allocated for crop and livestock payments. Really? So let's see. That's just a little under a tenth. So 10% of the money in true scam artists, not-for-profit fashion, 10% of the money actually is making it in to where it's supposed to go. The other 90% is administrative cost. Well, just for the record, the National Audubon Society's president last year, $460,000 was his compensation. Yeah, $460 grand. That's what he made. As the head of a organized crime unit. That's what it is. It's organized crime. When you take money from the federal government and only 10% of it makes its way to where it's supposed to go, it's organized crime! Seven waterfowl habitat foundations, which were based in Chicago, that aim to protect the waterfowl in Putnam County, Illinois, the Dixon Waterfowl Refuge. They've received about $3.4 million in taxpayer funds. Want to hear the part that's disturbing about that? They stay in their documentation that they are dedicated to restoring wetland resources of the Midwest. All the foundations are based in the same downtown Chicago high-rise office. 7 of them. They all share the same agent, and they all share the same IRS 990 form filer, and they gather their subsidies from the same USDA county office. Interestingly enough, they all claim to protect waterfowl with your money, but none of the ducks on there, and each of the foundations is named for a different duck. They're not endangered, none of them. They include the pintail, the ringbill, the blue-winged teal, the green-winged teal, the wood, the mallard, and the gadwall duck. Not only are none of these ducks endangered, but they're based, if you look at the International Union for Conservation of Nature, they're all listed as of least concern. When they were called to ask why they were taking $3.4 million in taxpayer money to support a bunch of ducks that weren't endangered in the first place, they refused to answer the phone or answer any questions. Why are there 7 separate foundations? Because you can reach deeper into the till and you can steal many more cookies if you have 7 hands than just one. That's why. You see, and you'll notice that they're based in Chicago. This organization is organized crime. And they are stealing from America. Oh, it gets better. It gets better. Muhammad Farms. That's a group that's owned by the Nation of Islam leader, Louis Farrakhan. The farm is located in Georgia. But the government subsidies that they collect, 160,000 of them, they go to Farrakhan's home in Chicago since 2002. The program, the Muhammad Farms program, the 3-year economic saving program, that's the group that owns and supervises the Muhammad Farms, which is owned by Louis Farrakhan. It was incorporated in September 12th, 2001. Is that ironic or what? And it's been listed as, quote, not in good standing by the Illinois Secretary of State since last September. The Office of the Illinois Secretary of State said the program was, quote, involuntarily dissolved by the state of Illinois on February 1. Involuntarily dissolved. But the Illinois Attorney General's office says it has no record of the programs ever being a charity. Now, they classify themselves as a charity. They call themselves a charity. They state that they're a charity. In fact, they state to their donors that you can make tax-deductible contributions to the, quote, 3-year economic saving program run by Muhammad Farms and owned by Louis Farrakhan. However, neither Muhammad Farms, the Nation of Islam, nor the 3-year program has a listing in the IRS's public database of 990 forms, which are the forms that are required to be filled out by true tax-exempt organizations. The truth is, Louis Farrakhan is getting this money sent straight to his home, not to some farm in Georgia. And the other truth is that we have literally the vast majority of the recipients of this have nothing to do with farming. And the small farmer who's actually just trying to make ends meet, generate a living, produce enough food for his family and a little to sell in the community, they don't see a red penny of this, folks. $1 trillion a year and we're not giving it to the real farmer. There's a guy who is the founder of OpenTheBooks.com. Adam Andrzejewski. And he was questioning this thing on this, this Farrakhan thing. He says, not in good standing, which is the savings program's current status by the Secretary of State for Illinois. Not in good standing doesn't seem to trouble the Cincinnati office of the IRS, which is, I might add, by the way, the same office that started that was the rogue office that was going after conservatives, right? Quote, why is Farrakhan's charity allowed to receive federal money? This is no longer about farm policy. It's merely a transfer mechanism from one set of Americans who pay taxes to another set who know how to game the system. See, the truth is, none of this money, $1 trillion of our money, added to the debt, I might add, because at this point we're borrowing, remember, 50 cents on the dollar, right? None of it is going to where it's supposed to go. The National Audubon Society is based in New York's Soho neighborhood. They'd be lucky if you could find a plant somewhere in the building, and that does not qualify as farming. See, the problem here is that our Congress, including the Republicans and the Democrats, have betrayed us. It's another giveaway to their cronies, their friends, and their supporters. And both parties participate. They're both guilty. Both swim in the same polluted river of corruption. Both betray us, betray their oath, and betray the principles by which they stand. They couch it in and wrap it in the flag. But it's cyanide pills. They wrap it in the flag and say, this is to feed our brothers and sisters who are in trouble. And when you bite down on that pill, the poison enters your system. They layer it and layer it and layer it so that eventually it becomes thick enough to be bulletproof. We can't fight it because it's so overwhelming. There's so much, we don't even know where to begin. We can't get new people elected in because they own the system. They own the money game behind politics. They own the voters. And those voters they don't own, they're desperately trying to get a hold of. I mean, you got to be kidding me, right? When you've got these people who are out there pitching about in CPAC, right? They're sitting out there talking about, these are the same people who are talking about getting the immigrant vote. I can't imagine why they want immigrants to vote for them when they can't even keep their own people voting for them. Truth is, if the conservatives in this country wanted to be effective, they would be adhering to the Constitution. They would be adhering to their party platform. They would be limiting government. They would be fiscally conservative. They would lower taxes. They would end the waste, fraud, and abuse. But it'll never happen. And the reason for that is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. It is because they are the waste, fraud, and abuse. The entire lot. All of them. Okay. Tonight, I'm going to wrap this because we're down to a couple of minutes here, and I wanted to remind some of you folks that tonight in Mammoth Spring at the Spring Dipper will be the program for the Property Rights Coalition, and they're going to have an interesting program that they do today or tonight, which is they're going to talk to you about how and what you should do when you are in a transportation stop, a police officer pullover on the side of the road, and how you should handle yourself. And I think you're going to find it very, very surprising what some of the issues are that you're going to learn about. How law enforcement is not really taught or has as their foundational function your civil and legitimate human rights. That they look at every opportunity to when you're pulled over as one of two things: either an opportunity to drive revenue for their department, and or a DUI or a drug stop. That's their goal. And almost every interaction they have with non-law enforcement people is determined to identify where they can make one of those 2 or 3 goals a reality. Drive revenue via citations. Identify, can I nail this person for a DUI? And thirdly, is there a drug bust imminent here? We're going to talk to you a little bit about how you can defend yourself against that kind of activity and what you need to know when you're pulled over, what you can and cannot or should and shouldn't say so that you're not caught completely by surprise and you're not manipulated into allowing searches of your vehicle or your home. This is an important opportunity tonight. It begins at 7 o'clock. If you get there an hour early at 6, you can grab something to eat. Spring Dipper is a restaurant, so they serve, of course, ice cream as well, but food as well. And it's in Mammoth Spring. I would encourage you to go if there's any possible way that you can. And I'm going to see if there's some way that we can try to record it so that those of you who are, national would have an opportunity to actually see this play acting, if you will, or role play in operation. So Kevin Jotz is going to be leading it. Kevin is a current law enforcement officer in the state of Missouri, but prior to that, he was a law enforcement officer out in LAPD. He's got a long history, a full lifelong career as a law enforcement officer. And it's very interesting because he attributes the fact that he has changed his viewpoint on law enforcement after working with Sheriff Richard Mack and reading his books. And Kevin's a good friend of mine and a man who I know and trust. And I think you'll be surprised what you're going to learn if you show up there tonight. So if you're listening to this live and you have an opportunity, it is tonight at the Spring Dipper in Mammoth Spring. Please go if you can. And it will start at 7 p.m. All right, we're wrapping the show for the day. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us live at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can find us at patriotfb.com. And then you can catch all of our programs on YouTube at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm the host here. Please email me with your comments and your input. You can send email to me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. See you tomorrow.